Hello, good morning. How is everyone? Today we will be continuing with Chapter 4 of The Gift of Guthix by Erin M. Evans. Gotta shake out the lips a little bit so that we can pronounce things correctly. Alright. Let me just see if our chat is working. There we go. Chat is working. So welcome. Here we go. All right. So we're going to be continuing on from where we left off. In Chapter 3, the party of Black Knights, White Knights, Wizards, and their apprentices, along with Ilme, who is acting as a scribe, but is actually an unwilling spy for Morana, a Varrock-based noble woman, I think, is a good way to describe her. And she wants Ilme to feed her information about the rune crafting expedition that she's going on. And Ilme is very unwilling to do so, is trying to conceal as much information as possible, because Ilme actually does want to be a wizard's apprentice and does want to learn magic, but she was forced to be a spy for Morana after she was orphaned by her parents. Orphaned and taken in by Morana, so she's kind of being forced to do something that she would rather not do. But she does have a special aptitude for rune crafting. She can feel the power that raw rune essence has, and in the last chapter, she was able to craft air runes, something that had not been done for thousands of years. However, when she does craft these runes, another apprentice who managed to also enter into the air altar with her, Azris, said that she is going to take credit for crafting these runes, and threatened to reveal Ilme as a spy to the rest of the party, which would probably lead to her being executed if she takes credit for crafting the runes. And so I'm sure this is going to become more entwined and more complex as time goes on. But let's continue on with Chapter 4. The 8th year of the reign of Lord Radalin of the Dawnblast tribe. The 13th day of the month of Fintuary, the Asgarnian frontier, the road to Falador. And so this is them making their way back from the air altar to Falador with what they have learned. They managed to repair the altar, and they're returning to Lord Radalin to report this. Ilme knew two things as they continued their expedition to find the rune altars. The first was that she was exceptionally lucky at the price of as if the price Azris charged for keeping her secret was rune crafting. She'd been correct that Ilme recovered quickly enough, more so the more she did it. The sacrifice of runes, the circle of wizards, the techniques that had repaired and re-established the altar of air had served to reawaken the altars of air and earth and fire and water. Master Indel was easily persuaded that they matched the first success, and put the talisman in Ilme's hands and the staff in Azris's. In the strange space of the rune altars, Ilme could pretend none of the outer world mattered. There was only the rune essence, the pattern of magic flowing into the altars, and the quiet sacrifice of her core self to make something so full of power and possibility. She could imagine not wanting anything else. She stood in these strange pocket worlds, an archipelago in a limitless sea, an island on an ocean of lava, a cavern of folded stone, and let herself forget everything that threatened her. But it always ended. She would hand the runes over to Azris, and they'd return to Gielinor for Azris to proudly present her hard work to Master Indel. And this was the second thing Ilme knew. The price for Azris' silence was to not stay runecrafting. "I've been thinking," Azris said, as they stopped for the night on the road to Falador, having left the mind altar as its cracked essence a few days before. "That necklace you showed me, I think I should have one like it." "What necklace?" Eritona asked. "Did you bring it with you? Can I see?" Ilme swallowed, terribly aware of how many people were in earshot. Master Indel and Master Uriana. Anaya, sorry, that name is difficult for me. Anaya, going over the maps. Anaya's apprentice Velzen beside the fire. Pariah and a handful of white knights sorting supplies. Her aunt gave it to her, Azris said cheerfully, her dark eyes glittering. "It's lovely. You can get one for me, surely, can't you, Ilme?" I don't know." "Oh, Ilme, I believe in you." Azris gave her a winning smile. "Set up the tents, would you?" And she swept past to go talk to Master Oriana's remaining apprentice. Anaya's. I add an R in there for some reason. To Master Anaya's remaining apprentice. Eritona turned to Ilme. "I don't like saying it, but she can be absolutely beyond the edicts. Is your aunt a gem cutter or something?" "It's complicated," Ilme said, which would only pique Eritona's interest. So she dropped her voice and nodded after one apprentice. "Is Azris romancing Anaya's apprentice?" Xanamoran? Eritona followed Ilme's gaze, where Azris was possibly flirting with the Ceradominist apprentice. "I don't know." "Do you know?" "She has been talking to him an awful lot." Ilme shrugged. "Strange place to be starting something up." "I don't know about that," Eritona said. "My cousin's village was attacked by giants, and she came out of it engaged. Not to a giant," she added. "To the girl she was hiding in the cellar with. Fear makes you impulsive, I think. And Xanamoran's not bad looking, although I don't like his beard." Something in the branches chirped overhead, and both of them looked up. "Huh?" Eritona said, peering into the bobbing branches. "It's your little friend again." Sure enough, the little purple dragon creature dropped down out of the tree, gliding around the two young women to land on a rock on the side of the road where the woods began. It cocked its head at Ilme and chirped once more. Velzen came up beside them. What is it you're doing that has that little beast following us for miles and miles?" "Nothing," Ilme said. "Then, nothing I know of." But the little dragon had appeared each time they found another altar, perching its snag. Sorry, I need to keep this this nice image alive. Give me one moment to just get us a nicer view of the runecrafting altar. There we go. But the little dragon had appeared each time they found another altar, perching in the snags around the water altar, hiding in the grass beside the earth altar, squeaking at her from the palm trees as they dug around the fire altar. "I think you have a pet, then," Iratona said. Ilme walked towards the little dragon, hand out to let it sniff, the way she would approach a dog. But when she came within a foot of the creature, it launched itself up in the nearest tree and sat chattering at her, as if scolding her for having the nerve. "I don't have a pet," Ilme said. "Well, it follows you all the way back from Falador," Velzen said. "It's either your pet, or we'll have to do something about it. It bit one of my knights," she smiled at Ilme. "A moment of your time, scribe." Ilme cursed to herself. She snatched the folded canvas from the supply pile. I have to put up Master Indel and Master Anaya's tents." "I can do it," Iratona said, scooping the fabric from Ilme's arms. She grinned at Ilme. "I'll get Azris to help, and I'll see what I can find out about her secrets." She winked and turned away. "There you are," Velzen said. "Walk with me." Ilme's heart was in her throat, and it was all she could do not to seize the amulet hanging under her blouse. "I have other chores." "There comes a point," Velzen said, "where I cannot, in good conscience, let you continue as you have been. It's becoming," she sighed as if Ilme had disappointed her, "a bit embarrassing." "I don't know what you mean," Ilme lied. Velzen put an arm around her shoulder, steering her towards the path that led through the woods down to the stream. "It means I'm going to give you some advice, a good word of Zamorak, if you like." "No, thank you," Ilme said. "I follow Guthix. I don't need to eat." She bit off the word evil, knowing it was imprudent. Another god. But Velzen laughed. "Who told you evil? Adalar? Anaya? Would you rather follow a god for whom the many shades of the world can be distilled into black and white?" She dropped her voice as they walked into the woods. "I always thought it was a bit of a broadside target, calling the knightly orders white and black, as though they were opposites of them. I prefer the Kintra. It means the ones that spark the fire." Soon, the quieter sounds of the camp faded, the burbling of the stream filling in the space between the shouts of knights. Ilme kept searching the trees, all her nerves expecting an ambush. "Zamorak is a god of change," Velzen said as they walked, as if Ilme had asked. "When you really look at the world, what truth is there beyond the inevitability of change? When we cling to stability, to satisfaction, all we are cultivating is disappointment. Because nothing ever stays as it is. Kingdoms crumble, gods fall, lords rise, or fall, magic reveals itself." Ilme kept her eyes fixed on the trees, something in her chest nodding into itself, as if the energy of her soul were trying to swallow in its own tail. "The world is in upheaval," she recited. "Great changes are upon us." Velzen laughed. "Your guardian. Here's the secret. Great changes are always upon us." Is that why you left Mistlin?" Ilme glanced sidelong at the marshal and found the other woman watching her with a smirk. "Great changes? That I've heard. The Church of Saradomin is the more common faith in Mistlin," Ilme said carefully. "And it seems like change would mean disrupting the order they prize." "They like things exactly as they are," Velzen agreed. "Stay in your role. Excel where you're placed. Don't make trouble. That is why Lord Radlin has my support, if you're wondering." Ilme frowned. Because Mistalin told you not to make trouble? Because change is constant. Ambition is the only way to guide that change, and Lord Radolin's ambition reaches far, Valzin added, conversationally. Much farther than someone such as, say, Morana or Narvra. At her aunt's name, Ilme felt a pulse. At her aunt's name, Ilme felt her pulse surge. The weight of the amulet hanging around around the bony center of her chest, too heavy to ignore. Maybe she wouldn't have time to worry about Azris's demands. But Valzin continued, no longer looking at Ilme. Asgarnia, a united Asgarnia, feels like a demon's promise. All steam and illusions. The warlords will never unite, not without a great ambition and a greater effort. Radolin has the vision and the wherewithal, and now the allies to do just that. To move his lands from a fractious tribes into glorious and powerful kingdom. Why wouldn't Zamorak bless that? Why wouldn't Saradomin come to that order among chaos? It's right out of his prayer book. Ilme said nothing. Valzin's words felt like a widening trap, impossible to shake. She was young, but she was not such a fool that she couldn't spot the tripwires. They stopped for a short drop, where the path slid, overlooking a steep embankment and the stream below. From here, one could scramble down the crumbling dirt to the water, or fall hard enough to break a bone. She made herself look at Valzin, who watched her as if waiting for something. He's fortunate to have your support, Ilme said. And yours. Every person counts. Any ally might be the stone that turns the enemy's charge, Valzin said, holding Ilme's gaze with her cold blue eyes. Azris has been keeping you awfully close lately. We're friends. The marshal nodded, as if this were something wise indeed. I've been rattling on about my faith. Maybe you should tell me the same turn. Tell me, she said. What does Guthix teach about treachery? Cold panic poured over Ilme. There was no hoping for safety, Valzin knew. She made fists in her hands, waiting. The amulet had triggered itself last time. Would it do it again? I believe Guthix wishes mortals to find their own paths, she said. To seek peace and balance. He would probably suggest forgiveness and recompense if necessary, she swallowed. Is that what you mean? In a way, let us say, Valzin went on, nodding at the drop. There you are, trapped, pinned, perhaps, against a steep cliff, a dark pit. Your enemy stands before you, threatening to push you in unless you do as she says. What, then, is the wisdom of Guthix? That you should perhaps negotiate? She thought of the Fremnik, their warlike warship. Maybe you should use the weapon at the hand to free yourself? Valzin laughed, loud and brash, and Ilme felt her cheeks burn. Is that not what Zamorak would advise? Ilme asked. I don't think he'd find it an insult, Valzin smiled at Ilme, laughing, mocking. Though it lacks vigor. But Zamorak's not here. Do you want to know what I would do? I would jump off the cliff. Ilme was suddenly terribly aware of the drop into the stream. What? I would jump off the cliff, Valzin repeated carefully. You are trapped, unmoving. Nothing can change. You are prevented from escape, from fighting. This is intolerable. To be denied the chance for change is to be forced to sit in your fear. Fear causes hesitation, and hesitation will cause your worst fears to come true. So what can you do? You can jump, she said. See what it is you're afraid of. Take away that which they are holding over you. Tell Radlin you are spying for Moriana. Balzan did not say, Azris cannot blackmail you if you take that away. But Ilme could not imagine anything so terrifying. How could Lord Radlin forgive the treachery? What would happen if Moriana found out? If she held very still, moved very carefully, she could weather this, surely. Valzen's mocking smile said, You can tell yourself that. Below, the stream burbled over the rocks and the roots and the hard ground. She could not hear a single person in the camp beyond, and now not even the birds filled the quiet forest. It doesn't concern you, Ilme said, forcing herself to sound calm, eyes on the drop again. In this example, that the bottom of the cliff might be covered in sharp rocks, or full of vicious wolves, or just be very, very far away. It could go poorly, and the enemy might change her mind or weaken. Or she might push you in, because she also finds her position intolerable, Falzon said. I don't like leaving the reins of my life in another's hands, and I think here our gods would agree. You are the master of your own fate, the arbiter of your soul's yearning. To let anyone tell you otherwise is to spit in the gods' eyes, she patted Ilme very gently on the shoulder, and Ilme tensed, digging her heels against the mud as she braced. But Valzan only said, Let's consider another puzzle. See how our gods align. A spy is sent into an enemy camp. She might be a threat to the camp, a blade to cut the army's hamstrings, but Zamorak would argue she is a blade with two edges. She knows a great deal about who sent her. She gets to choose which way she cuts. I wonder what would Guthix say, she added. For a moment, Ilme said nothing, did not even breathe. I suppose he would say it's her choice, that she should do what is best for the good of all, that she shouldn't leave valuable tools to rust, she swallowed, if such a person existed. Valzan nodded, as if satisfied. Very wise. Blade or tool. You bear the responsibility for who wields you. I think we can agree on that much. She looked up at the trees. You ought to trap that little dragon. If nothing else, you could probably sell it. And, without another word, she returned to camp, leaving Ilme in the quiet woods, standing beside the drop into the stream. Ilme stood a minute, watching her go, not sure if she'd just been threatened or warned, invited into a conspiracy. Not sure if Valzan had just unburdened herself or spun her a grand lie. Not sure, really, what she was going to do next. And there's a chapter break. Let me get a little bit of water here. All right. Ilme rode back to Falador with a lump in her throat the size of a rune. Valzan's word turned over and over in her thoughts, waking her in the night, spilling out of her daydreams. It was the only answer. It was madness to even consider. She was trapped. She was the only one trapping herself. When they'd left the camp by the forest stream, Master Indel had given her a few runes to carry in a pouch around her neck. Just to see how you respond to them, he said, a little giddy. It was like being asked to transport jewels, rare as they were. But this, apparently, was how it had been done in the ancient days, and the opportunity to start a wizard from the seeds of magic was too exciting to pass up. I don't think you should waste this on me, she said. Nonsense, Master Indel had told her, closing her hand around the runestones. Nothing's being wasted. If nothing comes to you before Falador, you can just hand them back. Just see what happens first. She took a few runes out of the pouch as she rode, clicking them against each other as she rubbed a thumb over their smooth, faintly dusty surfaces. The rune markings shimmered as if they'd been grown into little rock-like crystals. But For all they felt in her hands like polished stones, the very center of her thrummed with the knowledge they were nothing less than condensed power. Ilme clicked an air rune against an earth rune. That should make a blast of energy, and scorching sand if she somehow combined them. She nudged them apart. She wasn't going to be a wizard. Something dropped into her lap, startling her. She clenched around the runes and yanked the reins back on with the other hand. Claws sank into her legs. The horse sheed and whinnied. And Ilme dropped the reins to push aside the little purple dragon creature, trying to sniff the runes in her closed hands. Easy, easy, she heard Sir Prior soothe the horse. He dismounted and caught her mount's bridle quickly. "Are you all right?" he asked her. "Yes," she said, "fine." The little dragon seemed unperturbed by the uneasy horse. It hooked one claw delicately over her wrist and pulled her hand down level with its muzzle, staring at her closed fingers. Ilme unfolded them slowly so it could see the runes gleaming like eggs in the nest of her palm. It nudged each with its nose, then sat back on its haunches and looked at her. "Rue," it said. Then curled up on her lap, hooked its claws carefully into the fabric of her cloak, tucked its nose under one translucent blue wing, and went to sleep. At a loss, Ilme looked at Sir Prior. Still... I just got it now. He's a white knight from Falador. His name is Superior. Okay. At a loss, Ilme looked at Superior, still holding the horse's bridle. "What do I do?" she said. "I think you have a pet," he said, amused. "Maybe your master will know what it eats." He's not her master," Azris's voice came from behind her sharply, and Superior, her chestnut horse waited, switching its tail irritably. "She's just a scribe." But her narrowed eyes weren't watching Ilme, but the little dragon curled on her lap, and Ilme knew what Azris's next demand would be. In that moment, she made up her mind. When the walls of Falador appeared on the horizon, she had a plan brewing. It took 4 days before she was ready, but on that morning she strode into Radolin's war room, not slipping around the edges, not making herself invisible. She thought of the unassuming essence, changed into gleaming runes, and held that in her mind as she approached the table, chin held high, her little dragon she'd taken to calling Rue perched on her shoulder. "Lord Radolin?" she said. He did not hear her, still bent over his maps. "Lord Radolin!" she all but shouted. He looked up. Everyone looked up. Grand Master Adelar, and all the white knights against the far wall, Marshal Valzin, and the twin Kintra by Radolin's chair, Master Indel and Master Anaya bickering beside the window, Azris and Iratona and Zanamaron. That name always gets me. Zanmaron. Gotta ingrain that. And Zanmaron standing against the wall. Azris frowned, eyeing Ilme in confusion. "Yes," Radolin said. "Ilme, isn't it?" "I have lied to you," Ilme said, still too loud, but not stopping, not trusting she could begin and again if she faltered. I was sent here by my aunt, Morana of Narvara, to gather information and to report your army's movements." She had no more than said her aunt's name when Grandmaster Adelar stiffened, gesturing sharply at the white knights arrayed against the opposite wall. They swept in, a clattering of armor to surround her. Rue hissed at them like a cornered cat, and Ilme reached up to squeeze his foot. Ilme found Valzin on the other side of Radolin, her blue eyes inscrutable. No ally there, not yet. "I was not willing," Ilme said more loudly. "He is my guardian, and I have no one else in Gielinor. I thought I had no choice. I didn't fight her until now. Yesterday. I told her son, my cousin, that your army means to ride for Misthalin, to attack the city of Varrock in a show of force, that none of the other warlords know because you fear a traitor, but this is a show of force meant to cow them. She had sent the message to array a meeting with Miss Martin by bird the moment they returned, told Azris she was going to the grove to ask for another amulet, and asked her to cover for her absence. Azris had agreed, covetous as ever, and Martin had snatched up Ilme's frantic report with the same kind of greed. He didn't even ask how she'd found out. Perfect, he said. This is exactly the opportunity Mother's been waiting for. And Ilme rode back, ready to leap over the cliff. Radolin's war room. In Radolin's war room, Ilme held as still as the knights drew their weapons surrounding her. Radolin frowned at her. His thick auburn brows furrowed together. He gestured at the white knights to hold. We have no such plans, he said. I know that, Ilme said, but she doesn't. She has been waiting for the right moment to attack your southern holdings, and this would be it. If it were true, she wants this opening so badly, and her son wants to provide the answer even more. They won't question it. You could fall upon Narvra while she rides, and eliminate Moriana. Blade or tool, Volzin had said. You bear the responsibility for who wields it. Ilme had accepted her choices were narrow, and narrowing by the day. Sacrificing Moriana was inevitable. And the more she thought about her aunt's easy cruelty, the less conflicted she felt about the betrayal. This is the most transparent trap I've ever heard of, Adelar said. You may be clever, but Lord Radolin will never entertain such nonsense. It's not very clever if you can spot it so fast, Adelar. Volzin mused, still watching Ilme. You decide what to do with the information, my lord, Ilme said to Radolin. Ambush the Narvra guard, your southern flank, march on Misthalin, or simply stay in Falador and watch what she does. I have come to your war late, and I have been your blade as best I could, but I am not a strategist. And you've been Moriana's blade for a great deal longer, Adelar interjected. You cannot entertain this. Why not? Radolin asked. Why, tell me now. Ilme thought of what lies would appease him. That she was swayed by his great rulership, that she was entranced by the dream of a united Asgarnia. Give me one moment. There we go. Of a united Asgarnia. That she was awestruck and fearful of the promise of runes in his hands and his allies' hands. But she knew none of these would be right, only the truth. Or most of it. Ilme nudged Rue onto the back of a chair so she could remove her amulet. Morania gave me this as protection. It triggered on our journey and someone noticed, she said, carefully not to look at Azris. I was likely to be blackmailed or turned in, and I realized that, considering everything, Morania hadn't earned my sacrifice. I don't want to sit and be fearful and wait for something to change. I want to know in my heart what needs to be done. Adelar leaned around Lord Radolin's to scowl through his mustache at Volzin. She shrugged. You can't be disappointed if I gain a convert. It's a very compelling religion. She cannot be trusted, my lord, Adelar said in a low voice. She's a traitor. First to you, then to Morania. By that argument, Volzin said, you're a traitor to Misthalin. Really, we all are. And I can't imagine Lord Radolin holding that against any of us. Adelar spun on her, furious. Are you behind this? Behind what? Volzin scoffed. Setting Morania up to fail? I wish. I'm surprised you didn't wish it for yourself. My lord, Indel piped up, furious. I had absolutely no idea of any of this. He didn't, Ilme confirmed. One wonders why you didn't notice, Indel, Radolin said. Because, my lord, I am a good scribe and a good reader of people, Ilme said boldly. And though I am not trained, I am a skilled runecrafter. I made most of the runes we brought back. You can ask Azris. Azris? Radolin asked. Is this true? Azris looked as if she'd swallowed a toad, but managed one stiff nod. She could do nothing else. Ilme wasn't lying, and Ilme could easily tell Lord Radolin she had been the one to blackmail Ilme. Indel stared at her, astonished. Calculations of how much rune essence, how many runes she must have crafted, seeming to drift over his face. Master Indel has suggested I study with him, Ilme dared. That I would make a good wizard. I think he's right if you would keep me. I do not wish to return to Navarra, especially now I've told you what Morania has done. She would execute me, most certainly. Radolin considered the map spread before him, the markings of armies, the fortresses, the paths they may take. If you are going to make such a confession, my dear, he said at last, then it will be complete. You will tell me everything you have passed to Morania. You will tell me what she knows and what she doesn't. Ilme nodded. Of course. What my cousin has let slip, and what I know that she wants, she swallowed. I couldn't get him for you. Her son, Martian. He'd still meet me again if I asked. Radolin's narrowed his eyes, a different set of calculations crossing his face. You're very willing to betray your family. If they didn't want me to betray them, they had ample opportunity to kindle better warmth than me, Ilme said, her cheeks hot. As it stands, this court has shown me more kindness and given me more hope than Morania had ever could. She sucked in a breath, and before she could think better of it, she offered her last bargaining chip. She tossed the amulet onto the map. There, my lord. You can lock me up, she said, while you look into it. I won't fight. I can't, she added, a little ruefully. Not without that. Radolin stared at the amulet. All his advisors around the table waited, unwilling to interrupt. He sighed. I will say this. You are very thorough, an attribute I appreciate in my allies. He nodded to Adalar and Valzin. Put her in the chapel. Guard the doors. What about the dragon? Adalar asked. Stay, Rune hissed. The word undeniable. Let her keep it, Valzin said. This is going to take some time, after all. And all it does is nip. The white knights and black knights marched Ilme through the hold into a wooden-walled chapel of Guthix, tucked into its heart. Ilme went without protest, without revealing the vortex of fear and shame and dizzy exhilaration tearing her apart inside. Fear causes hesitation, Valzin had said, and hesitation lets your worst fears come to claim you. Ilme scratched Rue's scaly head. She had not hesitated. She had not dared, not for 4 days straight. Now she could only answer their questions and wait. And that is the end of chapter 4. But I think we can read chapter 5. How does everyone feel about that? Go straight on to chapter 5, because this is getting very intriguing. Political intrigue, betrayal. This is also a good time to stop and just check in. How is everyone doing? Let me just get a little bit of water here. And let's continue. Chapter 5. The 8th year of the reign of Lord Radolin of the Dunblas tribe, the 6th day of the month of Septober, Falador. So, yes, this is, we can do a little explanation here. This takes place, before runecrafting was like rediscovered. And this is the Black Knights and the White Knights. White Knights are from Falador. The Black Knights are more from not Berthorpe. Black Knights are from, where is it? I know it's up here somewhere. Somewhere around here. Goblin. No, right here. So Black Knights are from the Black Knight Fortress up there. And Lord Radalin, his whole journey, his whole like claim to power is that he's uniting all of the different parts of that region to wage a war against Mistalin. So it's Asgarnia versus Mistalin that we're dealing with right now. This looks like a good spot. We can center ourselves because we are dealing with Falador at the moment. There we go. So yeah, Lord Radalin is uniting all of the different factions of Asgarnia, and so even though the Black Knights are Zamorakians and the White Knights are Saradominists, they are currently working together. It was meant to be a kindness, keeping her in the chapel under guard instead of in one of the damp and dirt-floored cells the prisoners were kept in, but it was still a prison. Light poured in through the stained glass windows set in the wood-paneled walls, but she could not see out of them. The packed earth was oiled smooth, but there was no reed softening the surface. Food came twice a day, and she was allowed to walk the path that wound around the chapel walls. There was nothing much else to do, except huddle up to sleep on one of the hard benches beside the doors. Rue mostly slept, or tried to sneak past the guards, who always shooed him back into the chapel. She thought of the god slumbering deep below the earth, protecting Gielinor from interlopers, and wishing only for the survival and strength of humanity. He did count on them setting themselves against each other. Did he count on setting themselves against each other? Was she pursuing that peace, choosing herself over Morania, the Don Blas over Nivara, or was she making everything worse? Volzin hadn't been wrong. Things kept changing, whether you were just a person trying to figure out where to stand or a god striding over the planet. New people claimed power, new threats arose, new opportunities unveiled themselves. Unless Radalin decides to execute you, she thought, staring up at the teardrops painted in a circle on the ceiling as she lay on the cold ground. That was still definitely possible. Still a great chance. Still a great change, she thought numbly. For her, anyway. Ilme had told the knights everything she could remember, what she'd kept from Morania, and what she'd shared. What Martin had pressed her for, and what he'd let slip. It was hours of talking that first night. A week? 2 weeks ago? She'd lost count. Food came, the guards changed, she slept on the floor or the benches, and then she woke, and she walked. Morania and the Narvra filled her thoughts, her fierce owl eyes gaze, her shining armor, and her steel-gray hair. The angles of Ilme's father's face softened in his elder sister's scowl. Try as she might, Ilme couldn't imagine the warlord bending the knee to Radalin. This wouldn't end in surrender. I am fighting for a very way of life, Morania had said fiercely. That night she'd declared Ilme would go to the Dunblas tribe as a scribe. Radalin would sweep every tribe under his banner, crush our history beneath his heels of his heretical knights. He only gathers the followers of the interloper gods to erase us. Ilme thought of the White Knights and their prayers to Saradomin, Grand Master Adalar and his sneering attempts to proselytize. She thought of the little chapel, the dearest gods, tucked against the mountains, miles from their homeland, and the odd little shrine on the forest verge where people left offerings to carvings of a sacred plant. She thought of Valzen saying, "When you really look at the world, what truth is there beyond the inevitability of change? When we cling to stability, satisfaction, all we are cultivating is disappointment. And because nothing ever stays as it is, Ilme thought, walking the circle. That was true. And that was not counter to the belief that Guthix had brought people to the world in order to cultivate peace and balance. And she had to admit, Adelar wasn't wrong. They were stronger when they had order and expectations and listened to their histories. Great changes are upon us, Zoria had said, the mouthpiece of sleeping Guthix. Humanity has been like a tadpole in the mud, but now it must grow its legs and take to the new world, or it will perish. That made her think of Gunnar and the Jarl, and the lie she'd helped tell. She wondered if she told him the truth, spread out everything that had happened, whether he'd have the same urge to make something change, to break out of the shackles of his father's and his clan's expectations. Ilme walked and slept and ate and prayed. She found herself inventing little prayers to all these gods, Guthix and Zamorak and Saradomin, and even the odd harvest god down by the verge that she knew nothing about. The priests of the grove taught that none of them were here now, not since the God Wars. But if she listened only to her footsteps, fell into the rhythm of the circuits, she found it didn't matter. Please let there be balance. Please let there be change for the better. Please let there be peace after this. Please don't let me die. One morning, she awoke to voices at the door. Azris arguing with the knights. "First of all," she said, "you can't keep me from my devotions. That's just cruel. Second, I'm bringing her this. Otherwise, I'll be in trouble with Master Endel." "Do your devotions in the courtyard," the White Knight said, holding out a hand. "Give me the book. I'll pass it along." Through the doorway, Ilme could see Azris clutching a heavy book to her chest, a haughty sneer on her face. "Oh! Are you going to explain which chapter she needs to read based on how her studies were going on the road? Do you even know what she was studying? Just let me in." "She's a spy," the Black Knight began. "And I'm not," Azris said, shifting the book under her arm so she could count off on her finger. "I was born on the Dunbloss tribe. I hate politics. I don't ever leave Falador if I don't have to. And Master Endel told me to give her this book and those instructions. Let me in." The knights searched the book and, finding nothing, grudgingly agreed to let Azris see her. The other girl came in and took Ilme by the arm, marching her back to the far wall under the large stained-glass window and its circle of teardrops. "Iratona won't shut up about who figured you out," she whispered. "She's asking everyone, and no one's saying. Did you tell them it was me?" "No," Ilme said. "Of course not." Azris searched her face, as if Ilme were hiding something, as if she were Valzen, nesting truths inside lies. "What do you want?" Rue leapt onto Ilme's shoulder. "I want not to be executed," Ilme said. "I want my own bed back." Azris frowned. "I can't. I don't have anything to do with that." "I wasn't asking you to. I'm not going to tell anyone you were blackmailing me. If that's the reason you came, what good would it do?" This only flustered Azris worse. "But you could! Why wouldn't you? What do you want?" Excuse me for a moment. Ilme sighed. "I have bigger problems than getting some kind of short-sighted revenge, like being executed." Azris waved this off irritably. "No one's executing you. They've absolutely routed your aunt's army. spent piles of runes throwing magic at them, and there's about 1,000 missives waiting for Lord Radalin from all the tribes, and Mistalin's dukes waiting to talk accords. The Narvra are done for. And Morania? Ilme asked. I have no idea, Azris said. They'll be back in a few days, I guess. You'll find out. Mind, she added, I don't think you're integral in all this. They would have done it without you. But it'll look bad. She shoved the book at her. Here, Master Dill will want you to read this. So, if he asked, I brought it to you so you could get started. Ilme took it. The Rune Mysteries Uncovered. What is it? History of runecrafting and early spells, Azris said. I can't give you a spell book. The knights would throw me in here, if I tried. But you won't look quite so stupid if you read this first. 3 days later, she had read the book cover to cover, and at last the doors opened to admit Sanafin Valzen, filthy and blood-stained, and grinning. You're Onstead, Valzen said. I don't mean to sound heartless, but well done. When you decide to cut both ways, you really deliver. Ilme stood, searching for the grief she ought to feel, like testing for a broken tooth. But there was no sore gap, no jagged place where Morania had lived in her, cold and distant and calculating. Nor was there relief at her absence, only a kind of emptiness, as if she were a vessel poured clean. Good, she finally said. That means the balance has reasserted itself. Valzen chuckled. You're adorable, you know that? Ilme wasn't sure if that was a compliment or an insult. What happens now? Now, Valzen said, we see about putting your actual skills to use. I can study with Master Indel? She asked, hardly hoping. Of course, Valzen said, and you can assist Lord Radalin. King Radalin soon enough. In other ways. Your aunt wasn't wrong about you, I think. People don't tend to notice you're watching them. Maybe you just watch them while you study. Cold poured over Ilme. You want me to keep spying? I don't, Valzen said. Radalin does. On Master Indel? No, Indel's fine. But he has plans to recruit more wizards. We'll need to form treaties to let you all pass safely through Mistalin, Alcarid, the waiting gods nowhere else. So be friendly and watchful, and tell us what others miss, before we have another situation, she smiled. You've already made inroads with the Jarl's son up by the mine. From the sound of things, that's what we want. What happened to blade or tool? You bear the responsibility for who wields you. Valzen blinked at her, no smugness, no triumph in her. Yes, she agreed. You choose. You chose. You chose Radalin. I thought we were all clear on that much. What if I don't want to be anybody's tool? Valzen set her hand on her shoulder, guiding her out of the chapel. Then I suggest you set yourself to studying those runes, and gain the sort of power that makes the one holding the tools. So long as you are young and unskilled, you will have to choose who, not if. By the time Ilme returned to the Wolf Clan's summer encampment, the following summer, she felt as though someone new, someone better, had grown inside her skin. It's so cold, Iratona said, as they looked out from the ship's railing, clearly a little giddy. And this is summer? It's warmer than it was last year, Ilme told her. And it's warm inside the buildings. They're very smart about it. Wolf Clan's summer encampment spread down to the pebbly beach, great racks of smoking fish for the winter all along the edge of the settlement. She did not bother pretending to be polished or superior or distant, and grinned as she hiked up the beach, following Master Indil, Azris, Iratona, and the others, who would unearth the next shipment of rune essence. She knew now not to wait for the Jarl's leave, and merely left Iratona and Azris to find Gunnar, standing off to the side, watching Indel and Unaya intently as they approached the Jarl and his two older sons. Ilme slipped up beside him. "Hey, do you want to see something?" she whispered. Gunnar startled. A year later, he had grown an inch or so, and his face was starting to narrow. But now he was still caught in the slow climb of adolescence where nothing seemed to happen. At least, this time he didn't scowl at her. "You came back," he said, dumbfounded. He looked at Rue, perched on her shoulder. "What is that?" "Rue," the little dragon said smugly. "I met him while we were exploring." She took an air rune from her pocket, silvery and light, and Rue scaled down her arm to sniff at it. "He likes runes." Gunnar stared at the little dragon and the rune it hunched over. "To eat?" Ilme laughed. "No, he eats just about everything else. He's just interested in runes. I really want to see what makes I really want to see what he makes of the mine and Zoria. Can we go show him?" Gunnar glanced back at his father, the Jarl, all iron and bare energy, still holding forth with Master Indel and Master Ernaya. When Gunnar turned back, a scowl had lowered itself over his face again. "We should go now," he said, "before anyone gets ideas. I think Zoria has missed you. And you can tell me what I can't believe the Moon Clan mages had traveled more and you can tell me what I cannot believe a Moon Clan mage has traveled more of one world than me." Ilme kept her smile rigid. As much as she wanted to tell him everything, Master Indel had reiterated the importance of maintaining the lie about being from the Moon Clan. Excuse me while I reset up the shot. Do. "There's no wisdom in risking our access to the rune essence mine now," he said. "The Moon Clans are better off than we would be trying to make new allies. That much was clear. From my discussion with the Jarl, I'm sure the visit will only reaffirm matters." "What matters if the actual Moon Clan comes to speak with them?" Ilme asked. Indel waved this away. "They haven't left their island in generations. They won't bother, and we will make certain the Wolf Clan are well rewarded for their assistance." As they climbed the cliff to where the mine lay, Rue flying back and forth between them, Gunnar called back. "So, are you a mage now, or something? A wizard?" "Or something," she thought. She pushed that aside. No one asked her to report on Gunnar anyway. "My aunt died," she said, "so I don't have to be a scribe anymore. I can take the test to be a mage," she said. She still hadn't figured out what initiates did to become mages, but Gunnar seemed unbothered. "Leash demons, you're weird," he said, reaching down to pull her over the last rocks. "I don't know what your aunt has to do with this, with you not learning magic, but I'm glad you don't have to do what you hate. Too bad you didn't get rid of the other initiate. Can you do any magic?" "I only know a few little spells," Ilme admitted. "Do you want to see?" "Show me when we get to Zoria." He stopped and turned to her. "Also, you have to promise you won't turn into a self-important kind of wizard." "I have to?" she teased. "Who's self-important now?" Gunnar made a face. "What about this? Promise me you'll make what's her name, the other initiate, look stupid at least." Down into the mine they climbed, into the eerie light and the close, humid air, Rue tracking along the walls, flying up to the edges of the ceiling, chirping excitedly to himself. Ilme drew a deep, satisfied breath and felt, not her soul tugged in 1,000 directions, but aligned of herself. All of this could become magic. She could make all of this become magic. "Well, who comes down into my burrow?" Zoria's deep voice rumbled out of the gloom. Ilme broke into a grin as she saw his great glowing eyes. "Ah, the little fire starter," she said with utter delight. "You've come back." Valzen's sayings echoed in her thoughts. "I prefer the Kinshra. It means the one that sparks the fire." "Why did you call me that?" she asked, but Gunnar spoke over her. "She's a wizard now, like you wanted. She has runes." "And a little friend," Zoria said, lowering his head to peer at Rue. The dragon looked from Ilme to the guardian and back again, as if looking for confirmation of what it was seeing. "You shouldn't tell the Jarl," Gunnar added suddenly, "about being a wizard seer whatever. He doesn't trust your master, and he'll probably not trust you, and then you won't be able to come visit. If anyone asks, you're just a scribe." The urgency in his voice surprised her. "I won't," she promised. "I won't get self-important, and I won't tell the Jarl. And I won't start any fires," she thought. "Leave that for the servants of the god of change." Gunnar grinned at her. "Are you going to show the spell now?" "Yes, let me see," Zoria said. "I have waited a very long time for this." Ilme took out the air runes, small and shining in the palm of her hand. Something fundamental in the core of her turned towards it, like a needle in a compass. She glanced at Gunnar, leaning too close, and suppressed a grin. "Can you take a book out of my bag?" she asked. "Hold it out on your hand over on the other side of the cavern there." Gunnar did, though, eyeing her mistrustfully. When she stood away from her about 20 feet, she nodded, and he held the book up, balanced on his palm. A shift of that deep power, and the rune collapsed into a swath of shimmering energy that twined around her fist and as she clenched it, before following the sweep of her hand towards the book and gusting outwards, missing the book and knocking Gunnar onto his backside. Zoria chortled, but Ilme cried out and ran over to the boy. "Are you all right?" she asked, pulling him up. "I'm sorry. I was aiming for the book, I swear." He scowled at her. "I'm fine. Now you have to hold the book. But I'm going to get my own... now you have to hold the book, but I'm going to get my bow." She startled, and his scowl broke into a snort of laughter. "You thought I meant it. You should see your face." "A very good start," Zoria declared. "You will be able to build much with these, and you have others. You've been repairing altars." Ilme climbed up onto a shelf of rock in the cave wall to the massive frog's head, while Gunnar settled down on the ground. "We've repaired 5 rune altars," Ilme told Zoria, digging in her bag to fish out more runes. "I made these." The runes shone in the hazy light of the essence mine, brilliant fire, shimmering water, bright air, pulsing mind. "I'm still learning how to use them, but the wizards who already have been studying are doing amazing things. They've actually been able to create buildings with it." "What are they building?" Zoria asked, indulgent as a grandfather. "I assume you're not all tipping over Fremenic warriors." "The fortress," Ilme gushed. "Falador is becoming a city, like something from a fairy tale. We've only just found the old law altar, and that's actually important for making the walls go up. It's so interesting, like choosing the right words almost." She smiled. "But they've built the central tower, and it goes right into the mountain, and then right up into the sky. I wish you could see it." "Where's Falador?" Gunnar asked, wrinkling his nose. Ilme flushed. She was still supposed to be from the Moon Clan. That's the name they're calling my hometown. It's also some old city on the continent, from long ago." Gunnar made a face, but it was no different than the other faces he made when she did something different than him. Zoria's great eye was watching her, but there was no discerning what the guardian was thinking. Did he know she was lying? Did he care? Suddenly she felt as if not all that much had changed after all. "Master Indel brought his colleagues this time. Master Unaria," Ilme went on. "She's very interested in creating more spells to build with. You might like to talk to her." I wish to talk to everyone who will make their way to me, Zoria declared. I'm very interested in humans, especially if they bring an offering. Excuse me for a moment. Oh, right. Ilme reached into her bag, took out the cloth-wrapped slice of cake she'd made sure to take from the ship's table the night before. She clambered down and set it on the ground before the guardian, whose tongue shot out and swept it from the stone. Delicious, he said. I am so fond of dwellberries, he sighed, and looked down at her with his great glowing eyes. You have stepped onto a path now, Ilme. You cannot fathom the reach of it. It will carry you far and into strange lands, and I only hope that you will find yourself on it, not lose yourself. He sounded oddly grim, and worry stirred in Ilme. She glanced back at Gunnar, who was frowning with the same worry. Can I not just leave it? I will, if it's dangerous. Zoria settled Zoria settled into the crouch of his low-slung body. It's too late for that, child. What will be, will be. Change comes, and we can only guide it, not stop it. Be humbled and not dizzied by it. It sounded so much like what Valzen had told her. Fear causes hesitation, she said, and hesitation causes your worst fears to come true. Zoria's throat swelled. The booming creak echoed in the cavern as he released, making the stones around them ring. Fear causes hesitation, the frog guardian corrected. Hesitation gains one time to think. Unless it freezes us, Ilme said. Is that not worse? You tell me, child, the guardian said, as if she had said something wise and not asked a question whose answer she could not fathom. You tell me. But Ilme found she could not make sense of the guardian that evening, high up in the foothills beyond the Wolf Clan summer encampment. It would take a very long time, 30 years nearly, for Zoria's meaning to come clear, and the true reach of the path she'd chosen to be revealed. And that is the end of part 1 of The Gift of Guthix. So, that's going to do it for today. Ooh. Yep, that's going to do it for this stream. If you'd like to catch up on the other parts of the live reading, I have made a playlist that will keep these videos in chronological order. You might want to skip some parts because there was one live reading where I did do like some necks after I did the reading because I just wanted to do some necks, but I should have probably broken that up into a different stream. But if you're interested in the first couple parts, catching up with the story, those are available in a playlist. Should be called The Gift of Guthix Live Reading. You can find it on my channel. But yeah, thanks everyone for stopping by. I'm glad everyone enjoyed it. And as always, have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye-bye. Woo! Woo! I'm fading into the distance. Goodbye. Goodbye.